Here the continuation of the IS curve in chapter 20. Here this chapter describe the relationship between interest rate and aggregate output when the market for real goods and services in equilibrium. The learning objectives here is to list the four components of aggregate demand: consumption, investment, government, and net export expenditure. List and describe the factors that determine the four components of aggregate demand or planned expenditure. Solve for the goods market equilibrium. Describe why the IS curve slopes downward and why the economy heads to a good market equilibrium. Then list the factors that shift the IS curve and describe how they shift the IS curve. Planned expenditure and aggregate demand. Planned expenditure is the total amount of spending on domestically produced goods and services that households, businesses, the government, and even the foreigners want to make, while the aggregate demand is the total of outputs demanded in the economy. Planned expenditure and aggregate demand. The total quantity of an economy's output is the sum of four types of consumption spending or four types of spendings. Consumption expenditure, planned investment expenditure denoted by I, the other one denoted by C, while the government purchases G, and net export NX. The components of aggregate demand. We have the consumption expenditure and the consumption function, where we already know that income is the most important determining factor of consumption, where disposable income is Y minus T, while MPC is the slope of the consumption function, where change in C over change in YD, where A refers to the autonomous spending, where even at zero level of disposable income, some form of spending has to take place. Planned investment spend. Fixed investment are always planned. Inventory investment can be unplanned, but planned investment spending includes interest rate and expectations, etc. Net export, make up of two components: autonomous net export and the part of net export that is affected by change in real interest rate. Net export function is NX equals to N bar X bar minus XR. Government purchases and taxes. The government affects aggregate demand in two ways: through its purchases and taxes. Government purchases is defined as G equals to G bar. Government taxes, T equals to T bar. Goods market equilibrium. Keynes recognized that equilibrium will occur in the economy when total quantity of output produced in the economy equals the total quantity or total amount of aggregate demand, that is planned expenditure, where YAD is equals to the total output produced of C plus I plus G plus NX. Solving for equilibrium or solving for goods market equilibrium. Aggregate output is equals to consumption expenditure plus planned investment spending plus government purchases or expenditure plus net export. Understanding the IS curve. What the IS curve tells us: trace out points at which the goods market is in equilibrium. Examines an equilibrium where aggregate output equals to aggregate demand. Assume fixed price level where nominal and real quantities are same. IS curve is the relationship between equilibrium, aggregate output, and interest rate. Here the IS curve. This is region for excess demand for goods, region for or region of excess supply of goods. When there is an excess supply of goods or output falls, this is when there is excess demand for goods, output falls. So now we can check this point A on the IS curve and point B on the IS curve. Point A on the IS curve was at 3% level of interest rate, while 9 level of output or aggregate output was achieved. But at 1%, if it goes to point B, there is an increase of aggregate output from 9 to 11. But at G, it can be 10. But this is where, when there is excess demand for goods and services, and also this region, when it comes here at G, also when there is excess supply of goods and services. Why the economy heads towards the equilibrium? This is because interest rates and planned investment spending have negative relationship. Also, interest rates and net export have negative relationship. IS curve, that is the point at which the total quantity of goods produced equals the total quantity of goods demanded. Output tends to move towards point on the curve that satisfy the good market equilibrium. Factors that shift the IS curve. Here we can consider the IS curve shifts whenever there is a change in autonomous factors independent of aggregate output and the real interest rate. One example is change in government purchases, as in figure 2 we can see. When there is government purchases, a rise in government purchases increase equilibrium output at each real interest rate. Look at it at point A, at point B. But when there is increase in government purchases, it goes to IS2. That is step 2, causing a rightward shift in the IS curve, and the aggregate output from 11, but at point C it will be 11.5. When it goes to point D, when it shifts, it is becoming 13.5 at 1%, at 3% level of interest rate. Application: the Vietnam War. The United States involvement in Vietnam began to escalate in the early 1960s, but what happened was that government tried to increase its purchases, because usually a period when government purchases are rising rapidly, central banks raises real interest rate to keep the economy from overheating. So the Vietnam War period has, or had, however, had its unusual, because it was unusual because the Federal Reserve decided to keep real interest rates constant. Hence, this period provides an excellent example of how policy could make use of the IS curve analysis to inform policy. This is real interest rate at 2%, 3 level of aggregate output. This is where Federal Reserve actions kept the interest rate constant at this, at step 2. But at step 1, increasing military spending shifted the IS curve rightward from 1964 to 1969. You can say IS1, IS2, from point 1 to point 2. Step 3, raising aggregate output from 3.0 to 3.8. Changes in taxes. At any given real interest rate, a rise in taxes causes aggregate demand and hence equilibrium output to fall, thereby shifting the IS curve to the left. Conversely, a cut in taxes at any given real interest rate, increases disposable income and causes aggregate output or aggregate demand and equilibrium output to rise, shift the IS curve to the right. Another example of what shift the IS curve is changes in taxes, as in this figure. An increase in taxes causes equilibrium output to fall at each real interest rate. This is as a result of increase in taxes. It shifts from point A, this is point A, point B, but as a result it shifted it back from IS1 to IS2, while the aggregate output decreases from 11 to 9.5, and so on and so forth to 7.5. Application: the fiscal stimulus. In the fall of 2008, the US economy was in crisis. By the time the new Obama administration had taken office, the unemployment rate had risen from 4.7% to 7.6% in 2007. In January also up to January 2009. To stimulate the economy, the Obama administration proposed a fiscal stimuli package where the Congress passed the resolution to included 288 billion in tax cut for household and businesses and 499 billion US dollars increase in federal spending, including transfer payments. But what happened was that the tax cut and spending increases were predicted to increase aggregate demand, thereby raising the equilibrium level of aggregate output at any given real interest rate, and so shifting the IS curve to the right. Unfortunately, most of the government purchases did not kick in until after 2010, while the decline in the autonomous consumption and investment were much larger than anticipated. This fiscal stimulus was more than offset by weak consumption and investment, with the result that aggregate demand ended up contracting rather than rising. The IS curve did not shift to the right as hoped. Factors that shift the IS curve: changes in autonomous spending also affect the IS curve. Autonomous consumption, autonomous investment spending, autonomous net export. Autonomous consumption: a rise in autonomous consumption will rise aggregate demand and equilibrium output at any given interest rate, shifting the IS curve to the right. Conversely, a decline will shift the IS curve to the left. Autonomous investment an increase in autonomous investment spending increase equilibrium output at any given interest rate, shifting the IS curve to the right. So also a decrease in autonomous investment will shift IS curve to the left. Autonomous net export: an increase in the net export leads to an increase in equilibrium output at any given interest rate and shift the IS curve to the right. So also when there is a fall or decrease in the autonomous or net export, the IS curve will shift to the left. Factors that shift the IS curve to the IS curve. Another factor that shifts the IS curve is change in financial friction, as we have seen, as we have explained in the case of the United States. An increase in the financial friction as occurred during the financial crisis of 2007-2008 raises the real cost of borrowing to firms and hence causes investment spending and aggregate demand to fall. Summary: Table 1: shift in IS curve from autonomous changes in C, I, G, and T, where an NX and F as a function. Autonomous consumption: increase in autonomous consumption, change in variable increase, shift in the IS curve. Reason: because consumption increase, aggregate output increase, it shift the IS curve to the right. Autonomous investment increase, shift the IS curve to the right, and also income increases, this, so also this, and so on and so forth.